All right, there we go. It is 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I am Kathleen. I am a baker. I'm a certified executive pastry chef, and I taught at the college level for over 10 years, and I'm here teaching you guys, the PoPers, the practice of pastry bakers, who are all working on the same recipe on the same day. So the recipe lives on the Linktree, and today there are 3 recipes, a cake and 2 ganaches, one's a syrup and one's a covering. And then I do ingredient function charts for the recipes that live on Substack. And then when I'm done with all of this, this video goes on YouTube. So let me answer a couple questions, and then we're going to be getting into Rose Levy Beranbaum's chocolate cake. And I'm going to demo, lecture it, and keep it moving. And then afterwards we get to chat, which is the fun part. I do everything in grams. I don't recommend ever estimating. I don't ever. And I'm going to talk about this now, but I'm doing a Rose Levy Beranbaum cake. And they have discovered that over the last 30 years that the egg yolks have become smaller. So when it says 1 egg and you're getting an egg yolk, you're not even getting what used to be a full egg yolk. So if you can make the leap to using grams, I'm telling you, you will never go back. So here's what we're doing today. We are doing a Rose Levy Beranbaum chocolate cake with a milk chocolate ganache syrup and a bitter chocolate ganache that has cayenne pepper in it. Amazing. No, that's my point. Like with the large egg used for baking, it literally means nothing to me. My eggs I've weighed them, anything from 38 grams to 68 grams. They're little and big, they're from the farmer. Even when I go and get standardized ones from the grocery store, they're all over the place. So you have to crack them and weigh your yolks separately from your whites. Your yolks, if you're converting, are 20 grams and your whites are 30 grams. And then that's how you do the math. And I have tons of videos on scaling, which is a playlist on my profile page. Yeah, eggs are anything they want to be. Chickens lay eggs. The industry is going to try to find them all the way the same, but I don't know where you buy your eggs. Maybe you grow your own eggs, and those are going to be random. I'm going to do a quick fit check. Last week, I did not do the fit check. I completely forgot. And then I'm going to talk about the recipe and get moving so we can get everything into the oven. Because what you are seeing right now is a baking club. And out there in the world exists these recipes on my Linktree. And there are 3. There's a chocolate cake recipe with 2 ganache recipes to go with it. They're compatible. And we're going to be making a cake. And you can see right here, I have 1 layer that I made yesterday and today. And if you get that recipe, you can print it out, you can take notes. And then if you want more information, I go through each recipe, and on Substack, I put these ingredient charts, and they go through the ingredient that is in the recipe and what their function is in this recipe. Because if you say cocoa powder, it does something different in every recipe. So this tells you what it does in this recipe. All right, so I am a professional baker. I'm a certified executive pastry chef. I taught at the college level for years, and I've been in the industry since I was 15. So I am going to teach you as though you are a day 1 student beginning the semester. That was my specialty. It's brand new, professional seeking students. Thank you. So I respect a lot of things, from sanitation habits to working clean to focusing to using a scale to all the things that we do in the professional kitchen. And I bridge the gap between professional bakers and home bakers. And the only difference between those two is 1 day in the classroom. People walk in as a home baker, they walk out as a professional seeking student, and that is where we are. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna go pull my hair back because I don't fling my hair around or play with my hair in the kitchen, and I do not bake with my hair down. So I will be right back. Don't go away, I'll be right back. You're all in the club, and it's so great, it's free. All you have to do is show up. And if you miss it, you can go watch this on YouTube. So you're never behind, and those recipes are always on the Linktree. And if you can't find it, just let me know and I'll help you. All right, let me pull my hair back. Pull my hair up. Nice and clean. All right, there we go. Get some lighting on. Welcome to the PoP Baking Club. This week we are doing a Rose Levy Beranbaum recipe. It is called Deep Chocolate Passion Layer Cake. And that was the old book. This is the new one, the 30th anniversary book. This book, now I've had some people say, why are you using old recipe developers and old crusty writers? Let me tell you something. You want just new recipe developers and everybody new, and you think new is better in pastry. I think you need to think a little bit deeper about what is baking and pastry, what is the tradition, And also, there is nothing new about the ingredients. These ingredients, they don't care what's new. They don't care what your timeline is, what you think, what you know, or what you don't know. They do them. Ingredients are gonna ingredient. So when Rose Levy Beranbaum made a book 30 years ago, I ran a business out of this book. I did cakes for a long time. I learned everything I needed to out of here. And so now she's got this 30th anniversary, and of any of the cakes in here that people even had minor complaints about, she recipe developed them. She researched them and updated them. So then what we have is this new book, and in here, she explains recipe or ingredient function, and she gives everything in these charts. And in the charts, you have the ingredient, the weight in grams, and then she gives it in imperial measurements. So for those of you who want cups and spoons, it's in here, but I highly recommend you make the switch to grams. Grams are easily dividable by tens, and they make my life really, really easy. The deep chocolate passion layer cake is a little different than the Cafe Annie's chocolate cake we did last week. And it's really great that we're doing these back to back, because last week in the Cafe Annie's, we did bloom the cocoa with hot boiling water. We actually did the whole batter. And the cake itself was dense and moist and almost like a flourless chocolate cake. Well, here, let me show you. I mean, anybody can use this, but honestly, look at this book. I mean, it's broken. It's totally broken, and I didn't buy the new one because I had a problem with this, because actually it's easier with it being broken like that. And this cake we're doing tonight has some new theories about a chiffon cake, which is news to me, and it's just very interesting. The Cake Bible you can get online, just Google it. The 30th anniversary, you're gonna have to get new because it was just published, but I've heard you can get electronic versions, and the old Cake Bible is still great, and you can probably get that used. And Rose Levy does like the Cookie Bible and a bunch of others. Rose Levy, she is a real baker. She's there to literally help you become a better baker. So here's what we have. We have a cake today, and again, you can get this chart on my Substack. But we have a cake today that has ingredients that give us a sponge cake. Sponge cakes are often called chiffon cakes, but they are not genoise. A genoise is when you take a whole egg and whip it, okay? Chiffon and sponge cakes have the aeration, the leavening is partially done by aerating the eggs. So a lot of times you will whip the egg whites and then fold them in, but in this case, the egg whites get added at the end, and it's really kind of genius. We have a cake today that is a chiffon cake, and it's going to be a lighter cake than Cafe Annie's, but some of the things that we do are going to be similar. If you were here last week for Cafe Annie's, I want you to think about that recipe and this recipe. And if you still have it, look at it side by side. Think about what connections, including ingredients. Does one have baking powder and the other doesn't? You know, does one have the hot water added at the beginning and the other at the end? Like, what are the connections that you can make? All right, so we're just gonna get going because this will make it fun. All right, so I'm gonna put my camera over here. For those of you who've been here before, I move around a lot. I try to keep it moving. I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. Hopefully not having to wear my glasses will make me a little bit more sanitary. Wouldn't that be nice? But here's my recipe. This is what it looks like. And this is the recipe that I am working off of. If you notice if my numbers are different than yours, all that means is that I may have cut my numbers in half or whatever, but it's irrelevant because the percentages are based on the main number, okay? And that'll make sense if you're looking at it. All right, let me wash my hands, and I'm gonna sanitize the countertop. We have a lot to do. It goes pretty fast, and yet. So I've already cleaned my countertops, but I'm gonna sanitize them really fast with a bleach wipe, basically. Oh, and I need my apron. I didn't do the fit check for again. All right, here we go. Here's my fit check. I absolutely love Big Bud. I really like that this one just zips up. There's one button, but it's at the top. Easy to use. But I have no jewelry, short nails, no nail polish. My hair is up. I'm gonna try not to touch my face or my hair at all. And if I do, I will wash my hands. I wear clogs for safety. And my clothes and my apron signify that I work clean and that I'm safe. That's basically what my fit check entails. And this is just a Lysol wipe. I'm going to clean up the countertop. It's good to sanitize things, especially if you're using raw eggs or anything like that. So let's do this together. All right, so a lot of people are gonna ask, and I'm gonna try to answer these questions in advance. Yes, you can do this recipe using just a whisk in a bowl. You do not need a mixer. I'm going to use a mixer because that is easy for me to do. And I'm gonna start with this recipe. Now, if you don't have the book and you don't have this, all I can say is it's copyrighted and I don't want to get into trouble, but this is the recipe and this is my conversion, okay? So these are the ingredients and I'll go over all of the details, but you can do it on a machine using a whip or you can do it by hand with a bowl and a whisk. All right, cocoa powder. So I do have a full recipe here. So this is going to make 2 8-inch or 9-inch cakes. And RLB, who's Rose Levy Beranbaum, she talks about how back in the day 9-inch pans were popular and how they aren't as readily available. I don't even have a 9-inch pan anymore, but I can remember back in the 80s when that kind of that's all there was. So I am baking this in an 8-inch pan. You can bake it in an 8-inch pan. I already played with it and it works, okay? So we have 66 grams of cocoa powder and I use Dutch, which is alkalized. I don't use the natural kind. This is more acidic and we need that acid and that flavor to make the cake rise, okay? It's good for the baking soda and the baking powder reaction. Okay, so this recipe also is going to use boiling water. I don't have the boiling water scaled yet, but I have a lid for it and an amount. That way I won't forget it. It's right here. The other thing I have is oil, 108 grams, and that's in the refrigerator. And that's because we're going to start out with the cocoa powder and boiling water, whisk it, and then we're going to bring that temperature down with cold oil. If you don't have cold oil, you can just let it cool. All of the molecules in the cocoa butter bloom when the hot water hits it, and that's where the flavor comes from. And one of the things I learned from the brownie experiment extravaganza is either using unsweetened chocolate or cocoa powder gave you the richest, deepest chocolate flavor. I have like all my pans run 6, 8, 10, 12, you know, so there are no odd numbers. So I have in the refrigerator, I have sunflower oil and that's what she calls for, but if you have a different neutral oil, that will work. That is our fat. A lot of Genoise use clarified butter or melted butter. She is using, in this recipe, oil to make it more moist. And apparently before, in the old version of the book, the cake just wasn't moist enough. And so a lot of times chiffon cakes and whatnot are in tube pans. And so she's trying to make it in a pan and so it rises up and doesn't collapse, and she's achieved it. It's a really good recipe. And this is not an American butter, high fat, high sugar cake. It's not dense and heavy. It is a light sponge cake. So we are going to make a syrup to moisten it up. And I just got done doing my Cafe Annie's chocolate cake. I made a really cool decoration that I'm gonna post tomorrow. But that is so much heavier than this cake. These cakes are light, so they need syrup. But you don't syrup American high ratio butter and sugar cakes. So then we're gonna move to the sugar. And if you think about all of these ingredients, we are going for this light, tender sponge cake. It needs to have a very tender crumb and rise up in the pan and have enough structure that it doesn't collapse, but also be tender. So she's using all these different ingredients that go like this and work together to give us that nice texture. So one of the things she's using is superfine sugar. And I did buy superfine sugar, but you can just put regular sucrose into your food processor and you will have superfine sugar, which is great. And no, you can't substitute other sugars, not in this recipe. Baking powder. So in this recipe, we have baking powder and baking soda. Baking soda reacts the minute it hits liquid. That's when it starts releasing gas. Baking powder is baking soda and an acid. So it reacts right when it hits water, but then it reacts later during the heating in the oven. So you get an initial release of gas, and then with the heat in the oven, you get a secondary. That way, as the cake starts to lift, it doesn't collapse. You get a secondary lift and it stays light. And these are the kind of connections I want you to start to make. Because sometimes people say, oh, everything you're saying is so technical, but if you listen and if you're here a lot, or if you watch all the videos, it's weird how they become very repetitive very quickly. Everything I say about one ingredient has a lot of similarities as it works with others. And we're always thinking about desired outcome. What I think is a good chocolate cake, you might not like. If you don't like this sponge cake and you make it and you say it's not for me, I like something with more fat, more sugar, a little more dense, then you try a different recipe. So you find what you like. And when people say, what's your favorite thing to make, or what's your favorite dessert, I would always say that I was good at finding out what people wanted. What is your favorite flavor profile, texture? And then I would try to come up with desserts that made my customers, clients, family, friends happy. That's kind of what I do. I don't prefer either. I think that you need to think about when you're looking at your reaction of baking soda to baking powder, what are you trying to get? That's why I find it interesting in the chocolate chip cookie experiment that some have both and some don't. And sometimes, baking powder makes it cakey and other times it doesn't. It depends on how the butter is. So you have to think about what the desired outcome is, what method you're using, and what other complementary ingredients are in there. So this recipe is using both for the reasons I stated about a nice sponge cake. And then we have fine sea salt, not kosher, it's a fine sea salt, 1.5 grams. And then, all right, so we have an egg white that's coming to room temp. I pulled it out a couple of hours ago. We have these beautiful egg yolks. And as you can see, I put the amounts onto these lids just like this. And I get a stack of these, and then I go through and I scale them, and then all of my ingredients live on these trays. So when I'm ready to bake, everything is right here. Now this cake also has vanilla. I'm using vanilla extract, and then here's the really interesting thing. 50-50, so this is 75 and 75 grams of bleached cake flour and bleached all-purpose flour, both of which I did not have in my kitchen. I use unbleached across the board, but if you are making a certain kind of cake, bleached flour has been treated, can either be heat treated or through like bleach, and it basically like changes the exterior of the flour molecules and stuff and makes them rough so that they kind of have more surface area so they can absorb more moisture. More moisture, absorption, and teeny tiny little air cells, like a lot of them, instead of some big. Think like sourdough bread. You get some big air cells and little one, and that's kind of nice. But with a cake, you want a lot of little ones because a lot of little ones makes it spongy and really gentle to the tooth, and that's what makes a cake really lovely. All right, so this is what I call, well, first of all, cocoa powder is a dryer. So you can't just add cocoa powder to stuff because it's gonna be thirsty, okay? Flour is thirsty. It's going to absorb water. Where's the water in this recipe? Well, I'm adding boiling water, but there's also water in the egg white. Okay, there's protein, which builds structure, and water. In the egg yolk, there's no water, there's fat, but there's a really important natural thing that lives inside an egg yolk called lecithin. And lecithin is an emulsifier. And emulsifiers take things that don't like each other, like oil and water, and they're like a connector. They're a liaison. They attract both. So with an emulsifier, like if you just try to take oil and water, they do this, and then when you stop agitating, they separate. But the emulsifier will attach to both and create a new system, which is the emulsified thing. So when we look at all the ingredients going into my cake, we want them to be in a beautiful emulsified state, not lumpy, not broken looking, all smooth. So that when they go in the oven, we get a really nice product. All right, I also have, this is my sheet tray. I have 2 parchment sheets on here. I always line it, and then I have all my ingredients on here. I keep these because I'm going to be sifting directly onto these, and you will see. So here's where we're going to start. So I'm going to do this on the machine, but you can absolutely do this with a whisk in a bowl. So I am going to I take all of my labels and I put them here. That way, if I make a mistake, I can backtrack using those labels. So these labels serve a great purpose. You don't need to sift the cocoa powder, but it's going in the bowl. And I am going to scale my water. So I need 118 grams of boiling water, and I have my scale right here. And I have a cup that's heat proof, hit tear, and then I'm gonna get some hot water. This is my tea kettle I use for my tea every day. I love tea, and all different teas require a different temperature. So I dial in the temperature because I want my tea to be good. Okay, so this is boiling water. Boiling's 212. This is about 208. 118. So we need the hot water to start to dissolve the cocoa butter particles that live in the cocoa powder and to bloom those molecules. Otherwise, those volatile flavor compounds are locked in the powder. I'm going to turn this down so tomorrow, woo, it's hot. So tomorrow I'm ready for my tea. All right, so I'm going to put this, let me just make sure. I usually put my recipe into a plastic binder, like a top loader, and then I have it up here using paint tape. In the mixer bowl, cocoa powder, boiling water. Now you can do this by hand, but I'm going to do it in the mixer. It's quicker and easier. Get that going. And this is the oil. This is sunflower oil I got out of the refrigerator. Okay. So because I'm using the whip attachment, I'm going to make sure that this is emulsified. If it's all lumpy or whatever, that's not a good thing. And then I'm going to add the fat. Fat is sunflower oil and it's cold. I'm going to add it slowly. And one thing I do that you guys don't see a lot on my videos because I edit it out for time is that I do a lot of scraping. You want to make sure that you get everything out of your deli cups because every gram counts. You don't want to overthink it or get really too anxious about that, but it is a concern. All right, so I'm going to keep this going for a second. I know that I have the water, so I'm going to take this off of here and then add it to my list of stuff. So I'm going to show you what's going on in the bowl. You can see that there's separation, so I'm going to show you. You can see the oil is kind of separated and it's lumpy. So I am going to put it back on the whip and just let it go for a minute, and then I'm going to cover it with plastic and let it cool down while I do some other jobs. One of the reasons I print out the recipes is because I like to take notes and I like to diagram out the process. When I diagram out the process like this is how I like it. It helps me keep on track and I kind of have a schedule. So I know that while this is mixing, I can be sifting and getting my other ingredients ready. Okay, so I'm going to put these over here. This is not going to come together entirely. After it's cooled down a little bit, we are going to be adding the eggs on low. So it doesn't look like it's you know, it's a little broken, but that's okay. Let me get some plastic. I'm going to cool it down just a little bit. I can feel the bowl, feels warm. These are my tools that I keep on the ready. Before I get started, I pull tools that I need so that I don't have to be running around the kitchen. I'm gonna set up a couple things so you can see while this is cooling. And this is what I mean. I haven't introduced the baking soda, the leaveners, the salt, the flour to moisture, so nothing's happening. Nothing is being created, we're just letting this cool. And it's good to know what are our ingredients doing and what do we need them to do. Okay. So these are my 8-inch pans. I buy 3-inch high. I think sometimes if you get the 2, you wish you'd had the 3. And then sometimes if you have the 3 and it's really a small batter amount, I get kind of nervous. But if I were buying pans, I would invest in the 3-inch and then call it a day. That's what I have, that's what I use, and it seems to work. And so these are, I have 2. Now I did buy something for this project, which is interesting, because I don't normally buy new tools. Okay, so I don't cut circles, but you certainly can, and you can certainly buy them. I have full sheets of parchment, and then I cut them in half, and then I cut them from there. As long as your parchment is not going over the edge and creasing, this is all you need to keep your cake from sticking in the center. So for a sponge cake, we need these edges to be dry and clean because we need the batter to climb up the sides. That's how it rises. If you grease this, it won't be able to grab on and it won't be able to lift up, okay? It'll be counterindicated. So we're gonna spray the bottom, we're gonna put the parchment in and then give it a tiny spray. That's how we're gonna prepare the pans, but also, and this is what I bought, okay? Rose's Heavenly silicone cake strips. Now, a bunch of you have asked about cake strips. My experience with the cake strips were the fabric kind that you have to soak in water and then you wrap around. And I only recommend those if you're doing like 10, 12, 14, 16-inch cakes, like wedding cakes, because that really, it insulates the heat. So it slows the edge so the middle can catch up. And we are going to be doing this. This is a new innovation, you know, with silicone. So this is silicone from RLB. And I don't have a preferred parchment brand, but I will tell you, if you buy cheap, if you buy cheap and you think you're saving a penny, they will rip. They won't do what you need them to do. So try to, you know, I don't really know how to tell you how to buy them online, but if the price seems too good to be true, or if they're a lightweight, because I think they do it by weight, you don't want to go light. So this is how this works. It goes around here, but I thought they would fit 9 or 8, and I was a little suspicious, but obviously they're too big. So what I'm gonna do is put this in the center a little bit, even it out like that. And then I'm going to take these clips, which are just office clips that can go in the oven. And I am going to clip it to hold it like that, okay? So I'm gonna do 2 pans like that. And I'm not gonna spray them yet. I'll spray them when I get closer, because I don't want that spray and get all like separated and everything. So we're gonna go in the center, we're gonna pinch it, and then I'm gonna clip it. So I think these helped because these cakes are so delicate. You definitely wanna protect the baking time. So there we go, okay? Ta-da. So would I recommend these? Yes, I guess. Yes, I do. But I don't like a gadget, and that's pretty much all you can use those for. So here's what you can do with these kinds of cakes. Oftentimes they ask for you to take the dries and to put them in a bowl and sift them, and you know, like stir them together. And you can absolutely do that. You're doing 2 things when you're dealing with your dries, especially in a cake. One, you're already starting to distribute the ingredients. So that helps so that it doesn't all have to happen in the bowl. Because every time you take a step towards your finished goal, you're going to get a better outcome. The other thing is that you're aerating them a little bit. So what I'm going to do is, using my tammy, which is a fine mesh tammy, I am going to sift them 2 times. That is why I have 2 parchments. So let me push this back. So into, and I'm doing the sugar too. So unlike the creaming method where you're taking room temp butter and creaming it with sucrose, here we're sifting them and they're going in at the end, and we're calling them the dries. So in here we have the fat, the cocoa powder, and the hot water, and then we are going to sift the dries. So let me take all of my stickers. And again, if I have any mistakes or I think, uh-oh, why is this one? Because a lot of times when you make a mistake, you look at your batter and you think, what's going on? And then if you realize, like, oh, maybe you accidentally cut one of the ingredients in half and you don't remember doing that, you know, you can retrace your steps. So I just think this system, for me, works, and it prevents me from making mistakes, and it also helps me retrace my steps when I find that I've made a mistake. Okay, so I'm going to put the flour in first, and then the salt, and the baking soda and powder, and then the other flour, and then because the sucrose is so firm and kind of, you know, heavy, I'm going to put that over the top. And then I don't like touching the food any more than I have to. I try to keep my hands off of it, but this already has oil on it because I scraped the oil container, so I get a new dry one in case I need it. And I just take this and sift out. There's lumps in here. You see the lumps? And then I'm going to take my spatula and get all the lumps out. And then here's where the genius is. This is the parchment. This is what I mean. If you buy inexpensive or cheap parchment, because this is on and off for getting it into my bowl, it'll rip and you'll know you made a mistake. So you definitely want to buy the good stuff. And I've used natural parchment. It works great. So here's why. I use the second parchment, put this here, and then I'm going to lift this up, my dries, and I'm going to dump it right into the tammy. Okay? And then this doesn't go in the garbage. I can reuse it many different ways. I can just reline the tray and this becomes something else. All right, so I'm going to sift this, and there are fewer lumps. In fact, none. So there we go. So this has been aerated, it's been sifted, distributed a little bit, and I've gotten all the lumps out. So that's actually 3 things that sifting does. All right, so I'm going to move this over. I'm going to check my temperature here. And it's not that this has to be cold, we just don't want it boiling. And there is a little condensation on here, so I can tell it's been warm. Okay, so this is pretty oily. I don't know if you can see that the oil is a little bit separated, and that's okay because we are going to start mixing it, and the first thing we add are the yolks. And remember I said what lives inside the yolks is lecithin. So even if this isn't coming together, 2 things don't like each other, the yolks are they're gonna help with that, okay? And the egg whites are gonna go in last. I'm gonna take off the sticker from my my yolks. I'm gonna go ahead and take off the vanilla and put it over here. So this is where, when I do someone else's recipe, and I haven't made it a bunch of times, I follow the directions. And if they say mix it on medium for 1 minute, then I do that. I do whatever it says. So for this one, we're going to be adding the egg yolks on low, and then we're going to raise the speed to medium. I don't know what number that is because I'm building intuition. I'm going to hear and know what medium is on my machine, because believe it or not, everyone's machines are different. And then I'm going to do that for a minute until it's shiny, smooth, and resembles buttercream, and I'll show you, it's really pretty. And we're going to scrape, and then I'm going to add the dries, and then the whites go in last, which is fascinating. Okay, so I'm going to turn this up to medium, and I'm going to just put the 3 main yolks in, stop, and then stop the machine, scrape these out, and already I can see it kind of coming together. Egg yolks are a miracle. They do a lot. That's why a lot of times people will say, oh, when I make a cake or a cookie, if I want to bring it together, I just add an extra yolk. And you are correct. That is definitely the lecithin. It's doing its job. I would argue that you don't know what amount you should be adding, because that's random, because I don't know how big your batch is or whatever, but you got the right idea, that's for sure. All right, so let me get this going, and then I'll show you what it looks like. I'm going to turn it up to medium for about a minute, and then I'm going to show you in the bowl so you can see. It's the best lighting. So let me show you what it looks like, and I'll go ahead and scrape it a little bit, and then we'll start the mixer again. So you can already see that it's getting smooth and elastic, okay? This is just to get things moving and make sure that everything's off the bottom of the bowl. You're going to be amazed at how incredibly smooth this gets. It's hard to get everything off when you're using a whip, and I would not use the paddle. But again, if you didn't hear before, you can definitely do this by hand. Okay, so we're going to do it on medium speed, then I'll be able to show you how beautiful it's gotten. And we're going to scrape, and then we're going to add, I think, the vanilla, and then mix it a little bit, and then we'll be adding the dries. It kind of is chocolate mayo. Yes, and the crazy thing is once this is all done, it's really liquidy. It's not thick at all. Was there any beef with Broma after you rated her cookie? No, I mean, she contacted me and had a lot of questions, but my evaluation of the recipe remains the same. And I treat every cookie the same, so whatever I do to one cookie, I should be able to do to other cookies. The rules don't change just because somebody made the recipe. Like if you're doing a low moisture cookie dough, you should be able to scale it up and down. freeze it, bake it all these different ways. You should be able to run it through its paces. So that is what I discovered. So I can't recommend that recipe. And it opened up my eyes to the brown butter recipe conundrum in general, because it's a hard one to fix, and it doesn't seem like most people have found a really great remedy, to be honest. It's not just her. But, you know, she started out as a food photographer, and now she's writing baking books. So she will have to deal with, the truth is, a lot of people contacted me that are afraid to speak out publicly because they don't want her followers to be mean to them. So I don't know what to say. I don't really have a comment. I rate recipes all the time. I don't even, it's never even crossed my mind to think about the recipe developer, to be quite honest. So this is new to me. All right, so look how elastic and shiny, okay? Beautiful. And again, we haven't done any other chemical reaction here other than getting the fat incorporated and emulsified using the eggs with the cocoa powder. So that's beautiful. So now what I'm going to do, chocolate is so messy. What I'm going to do is add the vanilla, and I'm going to put it back on the beater on low, and then we're going to scrape, and then I'm going to add the dries. All right, so I'm going to pull up my ingredients because I know I have them all. I'm going to get them out of the way, and I'm going to take my egg whites, which are going in last. Okay, done. Here are my dries. I'm going to add the dries in half, 1 and 2. I talk a lot about thirds, which is fine, but we don't want to, because remember, we're trying to keep this tender and not overwork the gluten. Gluten is inside our flour. Cake flour has less gluten producing protein than all-purpose flours. That's why there's both. One is tender, one is for structure. It's just kind of in there. The second it hits the liquid, those gluten strands get activated and they start to unwind, okay? So once I add the flour to this, I need to keep it moving. So I'm gonna do one thing really quick. I'm gonna get my pan started here. And remember, I'm not spraying because it's a sponge cake. I'm not gonna do a chiffon. I'm not gonna do the edge. I'm just gonna do the middle. I'm gonna take my parchment that's cut like this. It's not gonna go over the edges, and I'm just gonna spray it. I just want this cake to come out of here. And I don't like when people smush their parchment everywhere. It gives you an ugly edge, and if you have an ugly edge, it actually affects the integrity of the edge of the cake, and if you're trying to layer it, because this could be made into a layered cake, you're gonna have problems. All right, so I've got the vanilla in there. I'm gonna do this. And I read the directions and rewrote them on my notes, so I am doing this exactly as written by Rose. And you know, like I said, you can even see from over there how glistening and smooth and beautiful. It's very thick and gorge, very pretty. All right, so we're gonna get that in there. And then I am gonna turn this on low, and I'm gonna add half of the dries. And in here are all the dries, including the sucrose. And this is how I add it to my bowl. Lift up your parchment. This is off, this is on. And so I'm gonna do half. And I'm gonna turn this off. It's gonna go right here. So I don't wanna overdo it. And basically, we're gonna raise the speed to medium to get it going until it's moistened, and then I'm gonna scrape, and then I'm gonna add the other half. So we're really just making sure that all of the dries are hydrated. We want a nice, even mixture of the wets and the dries. I don't want to overdo it. We got it going. We're going to get our egg whites in there, which have a lot of moisture. They have a lot of water. And most chiffon cakes, you would whip the egg whites separately, and we've done that with our sponge cakes, but in this recipe, we don't do that. So I'm going to turn this on low. I'm going to add the last bit of flour like this. And again, this parchment is like that. If you have allergies or an issue, I can reuse that. Okay, so this is, I'm going to move the camera because I need to have it mixing for 1 minute, but I'm going to scrape it real quick and show you. I'm going to get the dries in, and then we mix it for 1 minute And then we add the whites and we are done. So it's quite thick still. And you'll see how much thinner it gets when I add the egg white. So this is how thick it is. It's pretty viscous. And I already made this once. I made it yesterday. And the thing about this cake is it has to be completely cool before you syrup it. So you either have to do it early in the day or you do it the day before and wrap it. I have another cake so I can show you every step that I'm doing, but just so you know, if you do this, you are going to have to create some kind of a little bit of a production schedule, okay? All right, so let me show you what's going on here. And according to my directions, we are going to put this on medium for 1 minute. Can you even see? That 1 minute. So if you guys are talking about brown butter and adding, I don't know what all the conversation is. My problem with just adding water back is that when you lose water from butter, you're losing a lot. You're losing like a lot of the stuff that lives inside butter. And using an ice cube is silly, absolutely random and ridiculous. Using cream or milk makes sense, but it cannot be random. And I'm working on a spreadsheet that will dial those numbers in. But yeah, the moisture's gone and that's problematic for sure. All right, so look at this. This is how thick and beautiful the batter is, okay? I'm going to add the egg white. You're gonna see how thin it gets, all right? I'm gonna scrape, and then on low, I'm gonna add the egg whites. Let me just scrape this real quick. And you wanna make sure that you got the bottom. And no, I don't use those batter paddles. I don't like gadgets. You know, this works, it's designed beautifully and it works great. And just to have to scrape is not only something you do to make sure that you're incorporating, but it also gives you a chance to look at your ingredients and touch them and look at them and see what kind of consistency they are. So everything is like a check and balance. All right, so on low, I'm adding the egg whites. Woo, it's getting warm around here. And then once it's in, I'm going to turn it up to medium for 2 minutes. And then I'm going to scrape. I'm going to guesstimate the 2 minutes. So we're at 6:59. That's the thing. You should trust the recipe. And the recipe developer knows exactly how much water is in the butter. And if you use Land O'Lakes versus Plugra, you have a different amount of water. So these things change it to the point where if you're working in your kitchen and you don't get a good result, it's really not your fault. You need all the information, and that's why we need to start developing our recipes and treating the home baker like they're smart. Because you guys are smart. We just need to bridge that gap between what you know and don't know. And they're not industry secrets. It's just information, and a lot of that's been transferred to the home cook in the culinary field, but in baking, we need you guys to know what all of this is so that you can be smarter consumers, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do. So you're gonna see the finished product. It's getting a lot looser, and what I'm gonna do is scrape it real quick, and then finish mixing it, and then I'll show you. Yeah, it's much thinner. So what happens with this, just so you're aware, is like I said, it's very thin, but what you will notice is the thick parts that were at the beginning of mixing tend to like grab onto the bowl. So you really need to get underneath and don't just keep mixing because those things will not get incorporated. And what I mean is like you can even see it on the spatula. There's dark areas that are unmixed. So I like to stop midway through and just really get the edges. And I'm going to give this about 30 more seconds, and I'm going to show you, and then you're going to see how thin it is as it goes into the pans, okay? And then we're going to make a ganache, which is one of my favorite things to do. Ganaches are so pure and wonderful and just pure joy. All right, let me show you what's going on in the bowl. And I'll show you what it looks like when I lift it up. This is how thin it is. Did you see that? That is how thin. So I'm going to go ahead and clean off my whisk. Yeah, it's very runny. And here's my dish bin. And we are going to get these into the pan. Now the thing about using baking powder and baking soda is you have what's called low bench tolerance. The second this starts mixing the moisture and the all the ingredients, you have to get it in the pan. Now, according to RLB, you can scale these at around 500 each, but I'm going to guesstimate, and that'll work for me. And you can stack these or you can have two separate cakes. So the way I do it is to count. It's how I pipe, it's how I do a lot of things. So I will just, in my head, count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cut it off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I kind of look, estimate. But you can definitely put these on a scale, especially if you're doing these for wedding cakes or whatever, and you want to get the layers really, really even. Oops. Scrape, scrape, get every last bit. Clean this up. Chocolate is so messy. All right, so I'm going to show you, and then you guys are going to come with me to get these in the oven. I don't know if you can see them. I'm not going to tilt them, but actually, let me just, you can follow me to the oven. So my oven's set with an oven thermometer. I want the interior of the oven to be 350, and I'm going to check these at 20 minutes. But I know they're probably going to take around 35 minutes to finish. Woo, okay, 20 minutes, next. All right, what are we doing next? Clean up. Okay, so do we have any questions? Because the next thing I'm going to do is make a syrup. Yes, so the batter thins a lot after adding the egg whites, and you don't whip them. And so Rose Levy did a bunch of research, and she found that even if you have a chiffon cake where you whip some of the egg whites, but you reserve some and then you add them in their full state, you retain the moisture, because a lot of people over whip their egg whites and that just removes all the moisture, and then the proteins can't stretch because they're dry. So this is a way that she's found to create enough structure that it doesn't collapse in the center. So it's fascinating. All right, so here's what we're gonna do next. I have an induction burner. This is from IKEA, and it is my electrical, so I don't have to use my propane stove. All right, it uses a lot of energy, so you have to be careful where you plug these things in, but it is low heat. It doesn't heat up your kitchen. I think they're great if you have a coffee shop or a little business and you don't have a big burner or a hood. Induction burners are your answer. Just be careful where you plug them in. But I'm going to be making the next recipe, which is called a milk chocolate ganache. And the next recipe I'm doing is the Rose Levy Beranbaum milk chocolate ganache syrup. Let me show you what I have here. All right, so it's milk chocolate. Obviously, we're going to use milk chocolate. And this is the cake that has been soaked with this syrup. I baked this yesterday. I wrapped it in plastic overnight on the countertop. That's how I recommend it. And then today I poked holes in it and I used this milk chocolate syrup on the top and on the bottom after I removed the crumb. I'm gonna put more ganache on here, but I sealed it. So that's what I did, and I'm gonna do more. But here's the second cake. So the recipe I just made 2, and this is 1. It's very lightweight. So you already know this isn't like a high sugar fat American butter cake. It's lighter, and even though it's tender, it might be perceived, especially by Americans, as drier. That's why we're adding this syrup, but it's a ganache syrup. And honestly, it just tastes like really good chocolate milk. So here's the trick with the ganache. Many people ruin a ganache or have it break because they cook off too much of the moisture in the milk, bring to a boil stage. And I'll show you what I mean. When you make ganache, it is like this perfect balance, this emulsion of chocolate, of the proteins, because in our milk live the same proteins that live in the butter. Proteins, emulsifiers, and sugars. and water, quite a bit of water. So if you put this milk into your pan and slowly bring it up to a boil, or slowly cook it, or it comes to a boil and then you aren't paying attention and it boils off all the water, and then you pour it over your chocolate chips, the water balance is off and you are either going to get a broken ganache or it's not going to work. Now you can remedy it with a little more warm milk and things like that, but it's not often what you think it is in terms of what's going on with your ganache. It's that you literally just evaporated too much water. So what I recommend, this is how I recommend making this. When you put your milk onto the stove, you want to bring it to what I call a quick boil, as fast as you can for as short of a period of time as you can. So what I'm going to do is turn this on to high, the highest ever, and I'm not going to walk away. These things lock, and there we go. So this is the highest temperature. I want to encourage it to come up to heat, not lose any moisture, and then the second the bubbles kind of go across the surface, I'm pulling it from the heat. It's coming off, and they're going to be poured directly over. These are my chocolate chips from Calibo. I get these at Restaurant Depot. These are, I think, a 45% milk chocolate. Okay, nothing fancy. They look like chocolate chips, but they are not. I don't need to chop these because they are plenty small, and the amount of milk and the recipe and everything will melt these, okay? So I have a little plastic bowl. This is a good insulator. If my counter were really cool, I would put a dry towel or cork between. And then the vanilla I'll save till toward the end. The other thing that you need to do a good ganache is a whisk. When you make a ganache, you are creating emulsion. You have strong emulsions and weak emulsions. Like I said, if you shake water and vinegar and stop and they spread apart, that's a weak emulsion. At the grocery store, they add emulsifiers and you shake it and they stay together. That's a strong emulsion. So you can see steam, but I don't see the bubbles I need yet. So I'm going to use this whisk to bring the core of the emulsion together in the center, and then I'm going to bring it around. All right, so as soon as I see bubbles, which I do, I'm going to pour that over. And you shouldn't see scorching, shouldn't smell scorching, nothing like that. And if you smell scorching, don't use it. You cannot use it. You cannot get rid of the scorched smell, and it's a terrible odor. You're not going to make a ganache with a spatula. You are going to make it with a whisk. I'm just letting this sit for 1 second while it heats up the chocolate. And then I am going to start from the very center and stay in the middle. I'm not going to go around the bowl and I'm keeping the whisk on the bottom of the bowl. And I can turn the bowl a little bit, but you see I'm not going around the bowl. I'm just staying in the middle. And this isn't even a regular ganache. It's really a syrup. So the ratio is really low. So once it's all mixed, I can just go around like this. And here is the trick, okay? Trick is when you syrup the cake, and if you guys were here for the pound cake, you remember it's either cold cake, hot syrup, or hot cake, cold syrup, or simple syrup. So this is hot and this is cold, and I am going to, oops, I need to get the vanilla in there. I am going to check the temperature. This needs to be 110 degrees or higher in order to be put onto this cake. So let me get my thermometer and we will see, and I'm just doing this in Fahrenheit. It's 113. Okay, so that's perfect because that builds in time. I have a little stick. It's basically like a toothpick, just a little longer. And I like to use, for syrups, a clean silicone brush. And what you need to do, so it's plenty hot, which is great. It's at 116 Fahrenheit, which gives me time to work. So I'm going to take the plastic off, but I'm going to use the plastic to collect the crumbs. Now when you make this cake and the bottom has parchment on it, when you pull that parchment off, you're kind of taking off that crumb crust, and that allows that to get absorbed. So what we are going to do with the top of the cake, I'm going to flip it over. It smells great. That's what it looks like. Beautiful. I'm going to take you can take a knife and take the top off, but I am going to just gently massage it and pull the crumbs off. And I have 2 pieces of plastic, and I'll show you what I'm going to do. So I'm pulling off just that top layer. I'm not being overly aggressive. And now that syrup will be absorbed by the cake, okay? And you can see it's roughed up, okay? So then you can eat the crumbs or get rid of them. I'm going to get rid of them. They're in the plastic, but I'm going to put them over there. So I want the cake to go here. I'm going to start with the bottom up. And once this is syruped, what you need to do is let it absorb. And you can do it overnight, or you can do it for an hour, okay? But again, hot syrup, cold cake, we are at 111, which is the lowest that we want it to go. So now I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to take my stick, and I'm going to go around. You don't need to be crazy. You just want to give it a little bit of an advantage. And then I'm going to take, and you want a little more around the edges than in the center. You don't want to overdo the center, and you want to really pay attention and get it very even. Doesn't, like you can see, I'm not going crazy and drenching the cake. What we want to have happen is a little bit of osmosis. We want this moisture to go through the cake and get distributed and pulled around. Because don't forget, everything that we're doing has starches and things that are thirsty, that are going to soak up that moisture. So when I flipped it over, start with the edges. I can see it, and I'm paying very good attention. Then once I get the edges in the center lightly done, evenly, I'm going to do the edges, and I'm going to wrap it. Okay, and then we're going to make the ganache that's going to go on the outside of the cake. Now here's the other kicker. The ganache needs to cool before we can use it. So I have a ganache I made this morning. So I'm going to make the ganache, but then I won't be able to use it till it sets. Do not put the ganache in the refrigerator. Let the chocolate, which is made up of fat crystals, re-solidify naturally. Nature takes those fats and restacks them so that they become glossy and beautiful. And if you put them in the refrigerator, you are just rushing nature, and you don't need to do that. Okay, so there we go. Beautiful. That's all we need. This you can save, but it really just looks like, I mean, I drank it today, the one I made. It's really lovely chocolate milk. So I'm going to take this plastic, here's my stick, and I'm going to make sure that this is not going to dry out. So I'm going to take the plastic and just gently wrap it around, and then put it off to the side. That's it. And this could sit overnight or until tomorrow, or if I do this in the morning, then I can use this cake in a couple of hours. We just need a nice moisture migration and exchange of moisture, and it's not going to be drying out. And so this cake is already lovely. You can literally cover it with any frosting that you like. Rose Levy recommends making it to a German chocolate cake, or like I'm going to put this wicked good ganache on it, which is made with cayenne pepper. So what you have is a very dark, bitter, tender, light cake that has a lot of flavor. Okay, it's not sweet. Then you add this milk chocolate syrup, which sweetens it up a bit, balances it out, and then we're going to add this ganache that's, again, very rich, not bitter, but very rich, not sweet, with a little kick of cayenne. It's beautiful, okay? All right, so what's next? Take off my gloves, clean up my space. If you weren't here, I would have drank the chocolate. Or I would have poured it into a deli cup for me to drink it later. Okay, so we are going to make a ganache, and that recipe is also on the Linktree, as well as the ingredient chart for the wicked, is it wicked good? Wicked good ganache. All right, this is Rose Levy Beranbaum's recipe, and it's good for anything. It doesn't need to go on this cake, but it's excellent. And in here, let me get the ingredients. And I have a clean, oh, I know what's really bad about this recipe. I have to, okay, I'm going to do this in the food processor, but just so you know, you can do this in a bowl, just like I just did. And what I don't like about the food processor is when I start the chocolate, it is so loud, you're gonna have to turn down your volume. So I don't even know if you wanna do that now, but I have a nice clean pot. I have unsweetened chocolate, okay? This is plain chocolate with no sugar in it. And I have 24 grams. Take off my label and save it. And then I have a 60%. This is a Calabo that I love. It's a very good chocolate. Again, you're not getting really, really sweet, and then you don't have any sugar. So this is more of a bitter, strong chocolate flavor. And there's no sugar, so it's not overly sweet. Oh, there is sugar. Okay. So then I have cream, and look how much. Okay. This is 232 to, I mean, it's almost a 1-to-1 ratio. So here's my cream, and this is not on. Heat is not on, but I'm going to go ahead and put this in here. And look at the fat clinging to the container. Isn't that great? Beautiful. So I'm going to get the fat into, we don't want to lose the fat. Oops. Okay. So that's in there doing nothing. Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. This is not the same thing I did last week. Last week I did the Cafe Annie's chocolate cake, and this week I'm doing the Cake Bible passion chocolate. And last week's was like a dense, rich cake, and this one is a sponge cake, so they're a little bit different. Here is an interesting ingredient. So this is corn syrup, but you can use glucose. But just so you know, they're two different scalings. I'm using corn syrup because I know that's what you guys have at home, but I actually prefer glucose, and this, just so you know, slightly different than glucose. Its sweetening power is between 50 and 30. I think this is close to 50. Glucose is 50. Sucrose is 100. So glucose is half of that. So you add moisture, it's invert, so it's going to soften the ganache and cause it to be elastic and shiny. But this also has vanillin in it that they add to it. So let me pop this in the microwave. Well, actually, I don't need it yet. When I want to get this out of here, really sticky, you pop in the microwave for 5 to 10 seconds. And this is my cayenne pepper, and it's only a gram. And I use my mini scale to get that, okay? So let me get rid of the tray. And here is my food processor, and I'm going to do the chocolate first, and I'll tell you when to turn down the volume. But the reason I like this method versus, I could chop this up and chop this and put it in a bowl. But what I'm going to do is put it into this food processor and chop it in here, almost pulverizing it. That way, when the hot cream goes into here, it's going to create the emulsion and kind of get going much faster. And I want you to be aware that when we made the syrup, we used milk. And when we're using cream for the ganache is going to be thicker. It has less water in the cream than there is water in the milk. So these things make changes and difference in texture and flavor and performance. So let's go see what's going on in the oven. See if we can see what's going on. I'm not going to open it. Can you see that they're starting to rise up? They're not even close to pulling away from the edges yet. They're still very heavy, very delicate, very jiggly and shiny, but they're really coming up quite a bit. So I'm going to give these cakes another 10 minutes on the timer, and we'll come check them in 10 minutes. Now I only have one outlet that this will work for, so I'm going to grind these up and then plug this in and bring this to temp and then turn it off and plug this guy in, okay? Because I have to watch my electrical usage in this apartment. All right, so these are going to go in here. See how loud? It's so loud. It hurts my ears so bad. I'm going to take my label off for my cayenne. And the cayenne today, when I made it, oh my gosh, made me sneeze. Here's what I want you to do. First of all, my food processor is broken. I do not recommend this because it is dangerous. But this is what I'm doing, okay? Because it's broken. And I refuse to get another machine. But what breaks on these machines is always the plastic. So whatever pushes this button down here, it doesn't work anymore. So it's on. So I use like an IKEA hex tool and turn it on. So here's what I want you to do. Turn down your volume right now. Mute, turn it down. It's gonna be ungodly horrible loud. Are you ready? Turn down your volume. I'm gonna do it and then it's awful. Ready? Oh. Damage. It's terrible. I don't know what to do about that. You can turn it back up. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. This is what it looks like. I don't want to take it off of here because I don't want the blade to come up and get caught, but I'm going to show you how much I pulverized it. Okay? So that way it gives the cream a head start, which I think is really smart, and other than it being super loud, you know, whatever. Okay, so now I'm going to plug in. Now I'm going to switch and plug in my burner. Unlock it. I'm going to bring my cream to a quick boil. That means rapidly and briefly. These induction burners run through magnets. So sometimes I will move the pan just a little to get the vibration going. It could be just on a weird thing. I love induction burners, but they are strange. Okay, so I'm gonna put this on here, take this off, and I'm gonna pour the hot cream directly into here. And then I'm gonna pop this in the microwave for 5 seconds once this is mixed. This is the corn syrup, it's gonna go in, and then I'm gonna end with the cayenne. And I'm gonna scrape, and then that is my ganache, and it's wonderful. I know. What are you gonna do? What are you going to do? And I think in my lifetime, that's my only mixer. It's 30 years old, but this is my second food processor. And I think I ended up buying another plastic top, but, oh, I need to turn this on. Doi. There we go. And then it broke again. So I was like, forget it, but it's flat out dangerous. And if you work in a commercial kitchen, these, like a RoboCoupe, it's like the smallest one's $4,000. They're all broken. They're all messed up. And then if you have a mixer with like the cage and you cut it or alter it in any way, you make the warranty null and void. So like, there's so many tricks in the kitchen. People are always messing with stuff. I am using powdered cayenne, like a spice. Yeah, you can buy tool. I mean, I could replace it, I guess. I just don't want people getting hurt because, you know, obviously I could make it spin this way and I could get my fingers in it. So don't do it around kids. It's a bad example, but I'm not going to do it. But the IKEA hex tool is the best. All right, so what I'm doing right now, I've got a cake in the oven. It's a rose Levy Beranbaum cake. I've got cream in this pot that I am bringing up to a quick boil. The second, I call it fluffing up. The second that the bubbles go from the outside to the inside, I take it off the heat, it goes in here, and then I'm getting my ganache going. I'm going to go ahead and pull my ingredients and put them over here. And like I do this, just so that the magnets kind of... These also make a weird noise, and if you have auditory sensitivities, some people can't be around these. So they are different, but I think that they add versatility in the kitchen. If you don't have a burner, you don't have a big hood, but you want to do a little bit of work in your small shop, absolutely use induction burners. But you need to talk to an electrician because they use a ton of electricity and they can short out your whole system. So you can see it's steaming. Now if I just let this come up slowly, and I can also smell it slowly, and then I walk away and it's all the water, I'm going to mess up the balance of moisture and fat in my ganache. Very important. Okay, so it's coming up. I need to switch my machine. All right, so turn it down. I'm going to be turning this on again, all right? Here we go. Hang in there. The other thing I'm going to do is make sure to get all of this out of here. That's also important. There's quite a bit. And if it's scorched, you can't use it. You need to start over. Do not use scorched dairy. It's the worst thing you can do. And I'm going to put my corn syrup in the microwave for 9 seconds. All right, so I'm going to put the cayenne in. reason I microwave my corn syrup or glucose is just to get it out. It helps it just release. And you can do that with any sticky syrup. So it should go in there. And you can do this with the mixer running, with the food processor running. But I would like to cover it up. It's such a mess. Okay, here we go. So we're going to run this, and then I'm going to quick scrape it. And then, oops. Make sure all the spices, which kind of get stuck here and there. And this is a small recipe. So if you make a bigger recipe, it's nice. All right, that's it. All done. And here is where it's going. It's going in here. I'm going to strain it. And I am following the Rose Levy Beranbaum's directions. I don't question it. I just do it as written. Because she has tested and perfected this recipe. And if there's something I want to change next time, I can. But in the meantime, I follow it as written, and I'm going to learn more about her recipe. Then if I go off and do my own thing, then it's really hard to retrace your steps and figure out what went wrong. So after I strain this, I'm going to show you the ganache I made earlier today that I did not refrigerate. And you are going to notice how thin this is and then how thick that is. And it did not go in the fridge, it just sat on the countertop. So I'm going to scrape these edges. I'm going to hold just pour all of it, and then I'm going to take out the center because I don't want to cut my spatula. I'm going to scrape off the blade. And these blades are very, very sharp. I can't tell you how many people I've seen get cut from them. So I would take them very seriously. Okay? And then and you don't want to get water in here. You want to be very careful. If you're using a double boiler to make ganache, you just need to make sure that you do not get moisture into the chocolate. You will have problems. All right, so this is all going through the sieve. And when you push things through a mesh, you want to be gentle because the goal is that you capture things. And so if you start shoving it through, you're forcing things that, maybe you don't want in there. And it could be that the cayenne's very grainy. Maybe you ground it yourself and it's just very grainy. Very gritty. I also like to take a clean spatula and clean off the back. If you use the spatula that you were using, you risk getting in there whatever you don't want in there. Okay, so it's going to go in there, and this is done in the dish. All right, let's go take a look at our cakes, and we'll come back and look at our ganache in a moment. I'm going to open it and just touch them. When I touched the top, it made a little indentation that did not come back up. And they're still kind of jiggly. So I'm going to give them 5 minutes on the timer. And it helps that I made these yesterday. It really, really does. All right. So this is the ganache that I just made. You see how runny it is? But it's also very smooth. And she does specify that you should not stir it. So I'm going to get a plastic. And I could take the spatula out, but I'm just going to do this. Well, you can leave it like this for an hour and let it cool a little bit, but you want to cover it for food safety. So this is going to go off to the side. And then here's the ganache that I made today. Wasn't even that long ago. RLB ganache. Check this out. It's very elastic, very shiny, and kind of chewy. And that is from the corn syrup. It gives it a chewiness. And, all right, so here is my cake from earlier. I baked the cake yesterday. Today, it was cold. I cleaned off the top, poked, made hot milk chocolate syrup, brushed it on, and let it cool. And now, and I did seal it in with some of that ganache that was thin, and now I'm going to frost it. So I am going to put this onto here. And this is pipeable. I could put this in a bag with a star tip and pipe it very pretty. But I am going to give it a nice coat. And if you want, you could take the ganache that's thin enough to make a glaze, and you could run it over with over a cooling rack if you like. You can do whatever you want. This is just one recommendation for finishing this cake. She has a couple different variations in her book, but like I said, the combination of the cayenne, the bitterness of the cake, the sweetness of the syrup is really, really lovely. I'm just gonna clean it up. You guys want me to do a quick border, or is it not that important? Just clean it up. And then this week, do you know what? Last week, we got off and Dave said, you did not cut the cake. And I was like, oh my gosh, didn't even cross my mind. Okay, so let me tell you what I'm gonna do. I am going to show you how easy it is to make a quick border, okay? I think this is really important. All you need is a plastic bag. Plastic bag. I'm gonna do this super fast and we'll move on. I'm gonna get, I like to, because I want two hands to get all this in here, there's no tip in here. You don't need a tip. Okay. So then I can scrape this. I do not like this spatula. I'm gonna get as much in here as I can so I can do a quick border. So if you are thinking that you need fancy equipment and tools to make cakes look pretty, you don't. You can do a leaf border with a plastic bag, or you can do just a little pearl snail, you know, a little border, pearl border. Okay. I'll leave this here, get some scissors. Let's go look at our cake. We're almost done. And then we can chat. If I have chocolate on my face, you guys have to tell me. I do not use a thermometer, or sometimes I use a cake tester, but I'm gonna check them. If they are close, but I can tell they're not ready because when I press them, it bounces back. But I would say we're gonna give them 3 minutes. They are super, super close. And the thing about these is we need to get them out of their pan immediately. They need to be flipped immediately. Okay, because I'm right-handed, I'm gonna do this really fast. So we're gonna pull this out of here. Ganache is in here. I'm going to cut the smallest little part off the bottom and get rid of this. It's a food safety hazard. I'm going to take my bowl scraper and keep everything very clean. Okay. Scissors gone. All right, this is it. So I have this very basic cake. Here we go. Just concentrate for 2 seconds. So this can go in the refrigerator, or you can leave it at room temp. And again, if you have a little shop, think about how, I can't see with my contacts. Did you guys hear my contact story? I have, for the first time, have contacts because I wear readers and I don't want to wear glasses when I'm working. So I'm doing contacts for the very first time. And I am adapting. I think chocolate's beautiful when it's left simple. And I think the top's kind of pretty. But, you know, I could do whatever I want. I'm gonna leave it, but I want to do something. So let me see. Okay, we'll just do this. Now it's very soft. I think it looks pretty without, but I guess because I have extra, I'm just gonna finish. And this will go to Dave's work tomorrow, but I am definitely gonna cut a slice. Do not let me forget. As soon as we get that cake out of the oven and it's on the cooling rack, then I'm gonna slice a piece here. It's so shiny and beautiful. So when you're thinking of flavor, the great thing about what Rose Levy did is to consider the pairing. So then if you were to add fruit, like normally with the Cafe Annie's, I would add raspberries, but with the cayenne, maybe the raspberry isn't the way we want to go. So let's see. What fruits would you guys add? So there we go. And then I want to show you, this is a preview. This is the Cafe Annie's chocolate cake that I made into the rainbow that I'm going to be featuring tomorrow on my, I'm going to make a video. That's all. And they're all right here. These are my petals. I was thinking about putting them on a sculpture because I made so many. Isn't that awesome? So fun. My hands hurt though, I made so many. Here we go. I'm gonna need 3 cooling racks because I'm gonna do a flip. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I always recommend using 2 mitts as a habit because of danger. Whenever you think you're not gonna need 2, it's always safe to have 2. Okay. Here are our cakes. I'm gonna flip these immediately, but look. They're going to start to deflate immediately, so we need to be careful. This is how I do it. And they're very hot, and I have hot hands, but I'm going to put a glove on because these are not going to be eaten by just me. These are going to go to work, and strangers are going to eat them. But I need to take the parchment off the back and then flip them back over. So here's how it's going to work. Okay, ready? Flip. Oops. Come right out. Parchment comes off. Flip, flip. Flip, flip. Move it over. Move on to the next one. So that's also why it helps to have all your tools ready. Okay. Parchment off. They're steaming. Flip, flip. Okay. So basically these cakes, I want to allow them to cool 100% before I wrap them in plastic and leave them on the counter overnight. There's no need to refrigerate them, especially if you're going to be covering them or syruping them later. But if you want to keep this for a long time and serve these in a couple weeks, or a month. Once they're 100% cool, you wrap them twice and label them with the date and the label of the name and put it in your freezer. And they will last 3 months for quality. Yeah, so this guy, I baked this yesterday. I syruped in front of you. I made ganache in front of you. Now I need to wait for that ganache to get firm, and then I can make another cake like this. Plus I have these 2, or I could stack all of them. But anyway, that's where we are. We're done, yay! All right, but we are gonna slice this. I'm gonna take off my apron and we are gonna answer questions. We have reached that point of the evening. Woohoo! I will cut that cake for you. Let's get caught up on a few questions. Ingredient function, industry questions, questions about other recipes and things that are going on with you. You guys know I don't like cups and spoons, so I use the Jessica Reed's Baker's Appendix to convert everything to grams immediately. And people say, well, how do you know that that's right? What I do know is when you are trying a new recipe and if you are going to convert, you have to keep things the same. So if you use the same resource, instead of sometimes ChatGPT and sometimes Google and sometimes maybe the recipe developer mentions it, but it's way different than what you think, and you already don't trust the recipe developer. So I always stick with Jessica Reed's, and then if I have a problem, I know that there's a baseline of stability that I don't have to worry about. So can you melt the chocolate to make the ganache? Absolutely. The problem with melting the chocolate, if you're not skilled, is that you are either going to over agitate the chocolate and take it out of temper, or you're going to cause it to be grainy. Because chocolate doesn't like to be agitated unless it's done purposely. And so if you melt it and you over agitate it and then you're adding the cream and you cooked off too much of the water. And so the reason that you want to bring the cream or the milk to a quick boil briefly and then get it on your chocolate that's been chopped to a good size is that you are decreasing all of the touching and the moving and the possible things that you could be doing to throw off the beautiful chemistry of the ingredients. So it's just something that if you notice you have a problem, that you melted the chocolate and then you're like, oh, it's grainy, maybe try something different next time, but only change one thing and take notes. That's what I recommend. Rose used to use ounces, and I think they're horrible, even worse than cups and spoons. But now she's using grams. And so either convert or buy books that have grams. The belt around the pans is a silicone baking tool that Rose makes, and they basically, it slows the heat, because what happens is when you bake a cake, it's going to bake the most where the pan is, the bottom and the sides and the top. And you want the middle to bake and have it go even. So this isn't baked first and the inside's raw. So those slow the heat on the edges so the inside can catch up, which is great. All right, so we are going to do the poll. So I'm going to press start. It's going to be up in your upper left-hand corner of your screen. You're going to have 5 minutes. It's starting now. Whatever recipe you pick, I will make next week at 6 p.m. here live on the PoP Baking Club. You can only vote once, but vote. I'll do whatever you guys want. And these recipes will live as the PoP Baking Club recipes on my Linktree. And then I will get the ingredient function stuff on my Substack. And then this video, if you miss it and you're like, oh, I can't make it on Wednesdays, you can go to my YouTube so you can keep up, and then you can do it on your own at home and you can bake along. I'm glad you like the tips. This is all about empowering you and closing the gap between what I know and what you guys know. Let's close the gap between professionals and home bakers, because you guys are a powerful force, and I don't want you wasting ingredients. I want you to have respect, no waste, and have success. It is not your fault 100% when the recipe fails, especially if you've got a little bit of skill. Here's the cake. I'm gonna cut a slice in just a moment. This is still warm. But look how beautiful. Sturdy, it's beautiful. It doesn't have a ton of smell. Wicked good ganache. That's what she named it, because she wanted everyone to want to make it. And here's the cake I'm gonna slice. This is the cake I made that I just showed you with the cayenne. I mean, the ganache is still really soft. The winner is by a nose, carrot cake and icing. I want to talk to Ola Odina because she recommended this recipe to me and actually shared a live that RLB did, and I watched it and I had a wonderful time. And these are the sorts of things that are happening with my viewers that I just love. So I'm going to get to meet Ola, who's been here since the beginning. Except,
Hello.
Ace, tell me whatever you want to tell me, and then if you have a question, we can talk baking too.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me, and just thank you for always being so dedicated to us and hearing
You're
us
welcome.
and always just listening to us. That really means a lot. But yeah, this recipe for me, even though I watched it previously, I didn't have the courage to do it because I made a comment earlier. I noticed it's almost like she's breaking all the baking rules in this recipe. So it was very intimidating for me, but I had the courage to do it yesterday. And one of the two biggest things that really stood out to me, kind of what I mentioned earlier, was about how it's a sponge cake, which is light airy because of the egg white, but the
Yes.
egg whites are not being whipped. And then you explained it that the egg whites are just using it to be soft, but not necessary to have leavening. Then I understood that's why she has the baking soda and the baking powder to
Yes.
compensate, correct?
Yes. And that was what surprised me in that live demo, because I have heard of whipping egg whites and then reserving some, but never all.
Right.
And when you get into the science, and it works, like it's amazing. And it's the water content that I think that even if you were to whip them and fold them in, you would have a good result.
Uh-huh.
But I think on average, as a recipe developer, what she's trying to do is outthink what's going to happen in the kitchen, which in general is over whipping and drying out the proteins and drying out the egg whites. So I think that this is like the best of both worlds. Have you had a chance to taste yours?
Yes, I did. And it was absolutely like decadent. It was soft. It was moist. It did not even taste like a sponge cake at all. The texture of it was not like
Okay.
a sponge cake.
Keep talking because I'm going to slice this while you're
Oh my
talking. We're
goodness.
gonna take a look at
Wow.
it. So what made you, because I've looked through the recipe book, but I wouldn't have necessarily picked it and said, this is what I'm going to do. What made you attracted to the recipe? Do you like chocolate cake, or what was it, the method that you thought, ooh, this is
That it
very,
was the method, and ironically, I'm not a big fan of chocolate per se. I
uh-huh,
like chocolate, I don't love it.
me too.
But right, but with this recipe, I noticed that for me, I prefer dark chocolate more than milk chocolate, and this had a lot of the dark chocolate notes, and also her syrup, her milk chocolate syrup that she made from scratch, didn't use milk chocolate, was mind blowing. I mean, it was just everything for me.
Well, I'm so glad that you recommended it. And
So, so my other question was, because now I've just fallen in love with this cake, and I feel as though anyone that I know that likes chocolate cake. Oh wow, look at that. Look at that. My goodness.
let me pull it back up. Oh, it looks so good.
Right. So anyone so for me now, this is more like a technical question,
Okay.
going back to everything that like you've done from the beginning and the journey. So I saw one video about your scaling, and you mentioned that if you scale, you prefer to scale not one recipe at a time, but multiple. So now I started thinking, I want to make this cake over and over and over again. So what if I just scale the same cake, but multiple times?
Are you talking about doing it all at one time? Or are you talking about doing it one week and then next week and then the week after?
Scaling the dry ingredients all at one time, like as if making a pre-made box mix at home. And
Okay.
then I would just, because this is really kind of very similar to the muffin method too, the wet and the dries, right? So I
Yeah,
was
it
like, well,
is.
right, but then it's not the muffin method. But so I figured if I could just prep all the dry ingredients ahead of time, multiple batches, and then all I would need to do is um, is scale the wet ingredients the day of.
Right.
Wouldn't that could that work?
My answer is going to be that you can scale them in advance, but keep them separate. Because
Okay.
if you think about the ingredients, even in your cabinet, absorbing moisture, let's say it's humid, um, if you make them touch, even if they seem inert, even if it's just two kinds of flour or two kinds of what's in there, that, I mean, obviously and then are you going to add the leaveners and everything? There's going to be a moisture exchange because that's what the ingredients do. And the sucrose, if you were to add it to the flours and everything, it's hygroscopic crazy anyway. So now you're creating chemical reactions you don't want to. So what I recommend, and I don't think it's a big deal, is to scale them all in the containers and label them and keep them on a tray or in your pantry. And when you're ready, pull them all out. Now, there are some things I don't even scale in advance, like vanilla, because it'll evaporate. You can keep your refrigerated stuff. Well, your butter, I mean, you could do that and keep it in the fridge for 3 or 4 weeks. It's just butter. Eggs, only a week. But I would look at every ingredient and think, how much can you do? Keep it separate, keep it organized, but don't combine them. I know
Okay.
it's tempting, but there's just too much moisture migration, I think is the
Okay.
answer. So I wish you
Okay.
could, but I don't think it's a good idea. I get asked that a lot, but that I guess that's my answer. Does that answer your question?
That makes sense. Like I
Okay.
thought so. I thought I was like, I think I know what she's going to say, but I just wanted to make sure. Like, okay.
Listen though, I used to do, I mean, I've done a lot of exams and a lot with students where we'll have a sheet, a speed rack just full of recipes that we'll be using over the next couple of weeks. And, sometimes that's a giant container. Sometimes it's a little deli cup. So you really can scale them far in advance and just keep them separate. It kind of doesn't even add that much of a mess to your situation. But again, I guess that's up to you.
Okay.
Those are
Thanks for
great
that
questions because
advice.
a lot of people ask those questions. And when you first recommended this cake, I looked at it and honestly, I was like, I don't have time to learn something like new, and it was too late for me to feel like I could do a good job and get the recipe, posted. And then when I realized I could watch it and everything, I was so excited. So, I mean, just
Yeah.
like how amazing. Where do you live?
I'm in California, sunny
Okay.
California.
I'm sure
Yeah.
I've asked you that before, but how amazing that two people live this far apart and we can literally communicate through food in a
Yes.
way that you and I are literally have like a connection and a conversation. It's just amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
and share a very meaningful experience because I had when I had the opportunity to join that live with Rose Levy, I just felt it was so amazing just to watch her and her husband were there cooking in her own
She's hilarious.
personal,
I
yeah,
know.
and cooking in her own personal kitchen. It was just very encouraging to me, and just
Okay,
I
that's
felt
good to know.
connected to her, even, and I've never even met her.
It was fun to watch someone I know that well. I've literally internalized her recipes. She's the whole reason I
Wow.
even got into baking. So it was a gift that you gave me, but also it made me realize that some things I shouldn't worry so much about, other things I could do better. Like it was really wonderful. Thank you so much.
Likewise,
Well, let's
likewise,
look at my
likewise.
cake here real quick. Is this how
Wow.
yours looks?
Yes, decadent. Ooh,
Let's break off some and see how. Yeah, it's very bouncy.
yes.
Mm,
And I actually decided to do the same thing too. I didn't do the two layers. I did the one layer. I went to a cafe in Monterey, a very well known one called Alta, and they
yes.
inspired me to do that, where they just have one layer of thick cake, about 3 inches, and the icing, and it was just perfection.
This is way better than that last sponge I did.
Hmm.
This is excellent. So I
Yeah.
hadn't tried it yet, but I can recommend this.
Yes,
I mean,
highly,
this is
highly.
sophisticated but light. I
Yes,
highly recommend.
having 60% chocolate for the frosting.
So if you get a broken ganache, you're going to look for it not to be shiny. It doesn't set. It's grainy. Those kinds of things. But yeah,
Yeah.
this cake is lovely. It's absolutely, I mean, I'm just, it's really hard to surprise me in a way. Although I find myself through this investigation and this creative process, because I have to give a shout out to all my industry people because so many women that I know that work in this industry don't have time to be creative. They're so busy working and then they've got kids and all this stuff to do and nobody has any free time that even if they are a pastry chef at a restaurant or running a bakery, it's really hard to find that time to be creative. And I really get mired in the rules and the details. Even when I was working, I tended to not be creative in a way.
Mm,
And your recommendations and viewers' suggestions have gotten me out of my comfort zone in a way that is life changing. It's almost made me like a new person with a new perspective in this.
yes.
It's just been
Likewise.
fabulous. Thank you so much.
Likewise. No, I have to thank you. I have to thank you, honestly. I mean, I've created so many core memories because of experiences and things. Even Rose, I had never heard about Rose Levy actually until you. Like,
Are you
honestly.
kidding? Well, that's just
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. So it kind of is it's a gift that I got recycled to you because if not for you, I wouldn't have known who she was and the significance of who she was to even take advantage of that
Look how many
opportunity.
people you affected. You have me
Yeah.
doing this, and now I
Mm.
know people out there are going to do it. And I hope everybody tells me what they like and don't like about it or whatever. It just goes like that. It's amazing.
Thank you
Thank
again.
you.
Bye,
Have a wonderful
everyone.
evening.
Likewise, you too. Bye
Okay.
bye.
Bye. All right. This ganache compared to the sour cream ganache is completely different. It's not only softer, that sour cream really gives it a body. It's very soft. The cayenne's out of sight. And I think even if you left it out or you wanted to replace it with cinnamon, you could. It's very velvety. And the other one, my sour cream ganache, does not have glucose syrup or the corn syrup in it. So this has got more of a professional consistency. It's just amazing. I think that is not a hard cake to make. I think it tastes professional. It looks amazing. It's a wow. It's an absolute wow. So I can highly recommend that. This is sophisticated. I mean, you could serve this at any bakery, any fancy bakery with a cup of coffee. So next week at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, same time every week on TikTok Live, I'm doing a carrot cake that is sweet, no spices or nuts or raisins, with a cream cheese icing. I'm going to show you how to cut it really pretty and how well it freezes. And I will do a lecture and a demo. So if you've missed anything, you can go back and get the recipes. They're under the PoP Baking Club on my Linktree. And then you can watch the videos and you can learn as you go. And even if some of what I'm saying seems a little bit overwhelming or like a lot, you will very quickly know what all professional bakers know. It all becomes very repetitive. Time, temperature, moisture, emulsion, lecithin, this does that, this does like structure. You get, these start to all make sense and you are the beneficiary of it because your baking's going to get so much better. Good. I'm glad you like carrot cake because that's what we're doing, which is so good. All right. Well, everyone have a wonderful evening. I'll see you next Wednesday. Happy baking. Have a wonderful rest of your week and a beautiful weekend. And thank you for being here and for sharing the love of baking in a way that is really meaningful. And I absolutely love you. All right, guys, I'm out of here. Have a wonderful evening.